So today, of the day we're recording this, is actually September 1st. And there was a Nintendo Direct this morning, and sadly it wasn't for the NX. It was for the 3DS, which is still cool, but it isn't the Nintendo Direct everyone wants by the end of the year. There were some really cool announcements, so I'm going to get through it here through this article over at Eurogamer.net. And if I missed anything, or if the article doesn't cover anything that you remember, Dom, just chime in. This is by Tom Phillips. So this is going through the announcements, not in order, but there was a new Pikmin 3DS side-scroller game that was announced to be in the works, which is interesting for that series. I didn't think personally that Pikmin was a big enough franchise to be able to market a 2D side-scroller version of it. And it's weird to me. Like, the Pikmin games are always good games, but it's weird that they would take a risk on this. But yeah, I have no feelings about this. What do you think about this new Pikmin game?
I've never played any of the Pikmin games, so the fact that this is 2D, and I don't even.
Yeah, the more surprising one is Super Mario Maker heading to 3DS.
Yes.
But it's not going to have any online course sharing. You can play Wii U courses that people have made. Not all of them are going to work, but a good majority of them are. But you can't personally upload any courses from the 3DS version, is what I got from the Nintendo Direct. This is really interesting. It's not surprising, though, considering Super Mario Maker is probably going to be on the NX, and the NX is a handheld hybrid. Makes sense for them to kind of get the tools in place to work on a handheld version of Super Mario Maker, right? So this kind of makes me think if there is going to be... So if you buy Super Mario Maker on the NX, when you have it in the handheld version, are you playing the quote-unquote 3DS version, and then when you plug it in, are you playing the like an up-resed Wii U version?
Yeah,
that kind of makes me think of like, well, if there's two versions of that game, then which are you playing the same version on both? Or are you playing different versions? So we'll wait and see on that. It's really cool though, Super Mario Maker. That's definitely a game I might actually pick up on the 3DS because I love Mario. So being able to play a bunch of different levels is cool. Another game coming to the 3DS that was on the Wii U, Yoshi's Woolly World, is getting a fresh 3DS version with Yarn Poochie amiibo. I think it's called like Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World or something is going to be the 3DS version, and Poochie's like this little yarn dog. I don't know if it's Yoshi's pet. I'm not too familiar with the lore there, but the amiibo looks cool. It's made out of yarn. It's kind of like the Yoshi one that came out when Woolly World came out for the Wii U. That looks interesting. I'm not too interested in that game, but it's cool. It's coming to 3DS for people that want to play it. Next up, 4 years later, Animal Crossing New Leaf is getting a new update, which allows amiibo support on the new 3DS XL, which is weird to me that they'd update this game 4 years later. That's super weird. Another thing here that isn't too relevant to me personally, but people might like to hear that this is now a possibility, is that 3DS Street Pass now accepts more than 10 Miis at once. So if you're going to conventions, this will definitely be a benefit to you if you like getting all those Street Passes. I have no idea how the whole system works. I know a bunch of people love it, and they love getting Street Passes at conventions, so hopefully that helps you guys.
I've never used it.
Yeah, me neither. No idea how it works, but a lot of people love it. So, and one of the other cool announcements is there's a new set of Legend of Zelda amiibos to celebrate 30 years of Legend of Zelda, and also they'll work with Breath of the Wild. So the amiibos are a 8-bit Link from the original Legend of Zelda, an Ocarina of Time Link, which I'm super sure that Dom's going to be spending money on. What are the other ones? There's a packaged one with Link and Zelda from Wind Waker, and the last one is
the 8-bit.
No, I already said the 8-bit, the Ocarina of Time,
and the Wind Waker ones. I think that's it.
Oh yeah, there's 4 of them. Yep, you're right. There's
Link
4 of
and
them.
Zelda.
Yep. There was also an art book that you can pre-order through Amazon that's had the covers red with the gold, the Zelda gold, and it's just an art book from Zelda throughout the years, which is really cool. There was also a Mario Sports Superstars game that was announced, Picross 3D Round 2, which was announced, some new information on Pokemon Sun and Moon. There was a new version of Rattata that's actually a dark normal type, which was really cool, and the lore behind it's cool that Rattata's basically infested the island, and they released this new mongoose Pokemon that people say looks like Donald Trump to kind of get rid of them. And what they did is they actually changed their living habits, and they adapted, and now they're nocturnal, so that's why they're dark normal type, and they're actually black Rattatas, and they're not purple anymore. So it was pretty cool lore. Yeah, other than that, did I miss anything from the Nintendo Direct? There's also the Galaxy version of the 3DS XL, the new 3DS XL, that's like a galaxy pattern on it. Really weird to me personally that they're releasing a new version of their handheld so close to NX, but maybe it's because they wanted. It seems weird because it's so close, but maybe they wanted to release one final thing. Like, this is, probably the last 3DS you're getting. Because if NX is a handheld console hybrid, I doubt they're going to be trying to market to sell that, right? They're going to be trying to sell the NX. That's their new baby. So
this whole thing surprises me because there's a lot of stuff they just announced coming to 3DS this year and next year. A couple of those are not due till 2017. So yeah, I agree with you. This is really weird that they're pouring so much into the 3DS right now when assuming that the NX is this handheld thing that would presumably replace the 3DS. It seems odd. So I think there's definitely something we don't know.
Also, they never said in the Direct that any of these games are coming exclusively to 3DS.
So maybe they are also coming to NX, and that's why. But you did miss one thing, small thing. Skyward Sword is available on Wii U virtually.
Yeah, virtual console. Rather. Yep. Yeah. And there was something else, something having to do with Wind Waker that I don't remember. But yeah, if you actually want all the information, we did miss some minute details that aren't super important. But if you want the whole roundup, there's the VOD on Nintendo's YouTube channel, and you can skim through that and see whatever you missed. And people bash on Nintendo Directs because they like things live, and some of the humor is it's very cringy. I hate to use that word, but it is very cringy sometimes in their Directs. But I do appreciate them at least trying and kind of setting something up. I would like the NX announcement to be live. That's not going to happen. It'll be a Direct. But at least it's something different. It's refreshing instead of all these live conferences. At least it's something that's a little bit more structured, a little bit more planned. So yeah, that was the Nintendo 3DS Direct, which is super weird. It could, like I said, like we were talking about, is like it's weird that it's so close to NX, but it could be, like we said, none of them were mentioned to be 3DS exclusives, so they could become an NX. And also, maybe there was stuff that is only on 3DS, but they didn't want to wait to announce it after they announce the NX, because people won't care then. So maybe that's why they made this event, so they can get all the information out for the 3DS, because moving forward, they're really only going to be talking about the NX, So
I have a theory, actually, I just thought of. What if the NX also has a slot for 3DS cartridges?
Ooh, that would work. That would be awesome, actually.
That would be awful, though, if I couldn't move my digital 3DS games over to it. Then I'd be really pissed.
Yeah, but
because that'd be something. Yeah, that'd be something they would do.
Yeah,
or rather not do.
That's how they currently do it. Is they believe that your ownership of games is tied to physically having them.
Yeah.
So if you lose your 3DS, you're kind of screwed. So I hope there's an account system. But speaking of Nintendo, over at Let's Play Video Games, it's crazy because this website's actually broke. Laura Dale over there at the website's broke a couple of news stories in the last couple of weeks, and she writes, Nintendo NX handheld dimensions, layout info, lack of region lock. Excuse me. So there's an editor's note on this article, and she basically writes, since running this report, we have learned that the original source was less reliable than we claimed to be. Than they claim to be. We are sharing this information because while the specifics such as dimensions below may no longer be precise, our other sources have agreed with a lot of the information as being accurate when presented to them for corroboration. These sources have reliably assisted with multiple correct leaks in the past. So they're basically saying that their main source for this was found out to be not super reliable, but they have talked to other people, and a lot of this information is being substantiated. So I'm going to read for you here. Today's report comes from a source working on the NX title, set to launch in holiday 2017. Corroborated and lined up with information from sources we have worked with during the past. Our source was giving us the dimensions for the current NX development kit, as well as detailed diagrams for things like power, headphones, storage devices, more connect to the device. Our previous sources agree that the dimensions and layout sound correct. I'm pretty sure you've seen this layout, right, Dom?
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm specifically looking at the right side. The analog stick feels kind of high above the four A, B, Y, X buttons.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining, aiming or something with the right stick, and it being a burden to go push one of those buttons. Just the way it looks. This is a sketch, so who knows?
Yeah. It's weird. The thing too is, so it's the controllers are detachable. So It would be really bold, and this will never happen, but it would be really bold if there was certain versions of the controller on that right side, where you can get the one where the analog stick is above it, you can get the one where it's below it. That will never happen. They never do anything like that. But it's a cool idea to think of like, since these are detachable, it's kind of like mix and match to see what works well for you. And there's different kind of versions, right? So there's one where the analog stick is below, one where it's above. Just interesting.
I don't even know. The NX could be a sausage maker right now, and I wouldn't be that surprised. I have no idea.
As far as the ports and stuff, it's interesting. So the SD slot's on the top from this diagram. The TV connector's on the top where it would become a normal console from what we've been hearing. The power button's on the bottom, the headphone jack's on the bottom, and then the cartridge, because like we've heard so many times that they're going back to cartridges for this thing, is going to be on the bottom as well. The interesting thing here is, so it says it's going to have cartridges, and we were talking about the 3DS cartridges, right? What if, how would I say this? What if when you buy a game, you can buy the disc version that's for the home console version of it, and then you have a downloadable version that works with your console, with the handheld version, and the cartridge slot on the NX is solely for 3DS games. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if the cartridge isn't even for NX titles? What if the NX titles work digitally and through your console with a disc, and the cartridge is just for backwards compatibility with your 3DS? That's an interesting thing to think about as well. I'm not too familiar with like the architecture and like the workarounds with cartridges, but I don't know if you could have the same form cartridge with more memory on it than you do with the 3DS ones. I don't know if it had to be bigger. You know, I don't know if it could be put into
micro SD cards with like 64, 120, and 250 gigabyte storage. But I don't know how that works with games, like you're saying, the architecture.
And not so much the space, but like the form factor. I don't know if you can basically make it so it can read both of those things. I don't know if you can make it so it reads both the NX cartridges and the 3DS ones. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how that works. I'm not too familiar with that. The size thing isn't an issue. They probably have stuff where, exactly, like SD cards and memory that you can store a bunch of stuff. It's just, I don't know if you can have one slot where it reads both of them. I'm not too sure. But as far as the diagram, it goes on to show the detachable controllers. The biggest thing, like you said, the biggest gripe people are having is that the analog stick is above the face buttons on the right side. The start and select buttons are Nintendo buttons. They look exactly like Nintendo buttons, the tiny little circles. There was also another story that I didn't include in this week's news, but it is relevant, about the D-pad being separated. It's not all one piece, and that it's going to have a share button, which I think on the diagram is that button below the select button. And the share button is supposed to work like the share feature on the PS4 DualShock, which is weird to me that games are going to have share buttons now, especially Nintendo, who is known for not liking Let's Plays.
Yeah, and I doubt it.
Yeah. I think the share button maybe isn't what we like. It's not share to social media. I think it's share on the Nintendo community thing, the Nintendo UI, the Nintendo whatever it is, the Miiverse. I think that's what it is. I don't think it's so much share to Twitter, share to Facebook. You know, that's not Nintendo. I don't think. But Nintendo hasn't really been Nintendo lately with some of the stuff they're rumored to be doing with this device. So we'll see. Any takeaways with this before we move on to the next story, Dom? As far as this, do you think this is how much of a percentage do you think that this is right on these dimensions? Do you think that these are like 90%, these are like 80%, these are like 70%? Like if you were a betting man, what would you guess?
I'd say this is maybe 50% correct.
Okay, you're going really low. You think that
that's under the assumption that all the previous rumors we've heard are true about it being a hybrid and all that.
So what do you think is, like, what is the 50% about this that you think is right? Is it the slots? Because those are kind of, those can be anywhere, really. Or is it that you don't really think that they put the analog stick above the buttons? Like, what exactly with this is reading as wrong?
So the layout of the buttons, the analog sticks look ridiculous up top. That doesn't really make sense. I mean, they've got to do some testing and realize that this isn't comfortable. This doesn't work. Also, the TV connector, I imagine that being on the bottom, just because from all the previous rumors, the way I visualize this, the NX is you basically have a dock connected to your TV the whole time, and it's nothing by itself. But then you pop this guy into the dock, and it becomes your home console, right?
Yeah. That's
kind of how I pictured this. So I think the TV connector would be on the bottom if you're going to put it into a dock. That would make more sense to me. And then otherwise, it just it's too square. It's not very Nintendo. I don't know.
Well, also, I think this is somebody seeing it or maybe seeing information and jotting it down. The easiest thing for somebody to draw is a square, right?
Yeah.
So it'll probably have a little bit more smoothness to it, a lot more bevel. But I think the easiest thing to get across a message is, well, make it a rectangle because it's practically a rectangle. You know, you don't get the curvatures or any of those things because people are just trying to communicate an idea.
And looks like it was drawn in Microsoft Paint or, on a computer. Yeah. Well, point being, they used, the rectangle tool where you just drag it and it makes a perfect rectangle.
Yeah. Well, so the weird thing too is, so like some of the rumors were that you put this on the dock and it makes the whole thing more powerful, right? Which is interesting to me because it could work two ways. It could be that the TV connector is on the top because they want you to read it as a controller. So therefore it plugs into the top, that reads as a controller, right? The port to your TV is at the top. That makes sense. But maybe it is, when you plug it into your TV, you just turn it upside down too. So maybe think about it as when you're holding it as a mobile device, that's the top, but when you plug it in, it's the bottom. I think though that they do have, if this is all true and you can detach the controllers, they can definitely reiterate and make it a better experience, which is really smart and ingenious kind of, because if they do testing and they realize that people don't like the controller parts, they can, release newer versions. Also, and like I'm not a businessman, I'm not familiar with this stuff, but I would think that the central area where the screen is and all the components are is definitely harder to remanufacture as opposed to manufacturing a bunch of the controller pieces, So if they did go through testing, and this is early diagrams, and they have reiterated on the actual design, it's way easier to go through and, print out and manufacture a ton of the controller side pieces instead of the main screen area with all of the components, right? It would be way easier to just manufacture a bunch of those, be like, oh, we screwed up, we have to fix it, as opposed to, if this was all one piece and having to remanufacture a bunch of 3DSs, that wouldn't happen. So, interesting, we'll see. The next story here, Foxxcon employee leaks PS4 Neo layout mockup looks identical to final product. Price is rumored to be $450. Price is this whole story is interesting. So if you're not familiar, Foxconn is essentially a Taiwanese firm that worked with Sony through a contract on the PlayStation 2 and many other console and handheld devices.
On a side note, they're apparently very evil, and you don't want to work for them because they just treat their workers very poorly.
Shocker,
Yeah, and they make Apple devices, and pretty much every electronic device is manufactured at Foxconn.
Exactly. So the Foxconn employee wrote an A9VG on A9VG, which is a Chinese forum where they talk about stuff. He basically put that the factory code is as follows: C, original PS4, D, PS4 Slim, G, PS4 Neo. The PS4 Neo is 3, similar to the Sandwich. Old price of 3,000 staff speaks. I don't know what that means. 1, the button is located. It basically goes. I don't want to read through this whole thing. I'll have a link in the description of the YouTube video. But essentially, the drawing of it is, think of a PlayStation 4 Slim, the new one that got leaked. Think of it having an extra layer. So think of it being 3 levels instead of 2. That's essentially what the mock-up of the PS4 Neo looks like. It's also rumored to be 9.5 pounds. So that doesn't surprise me. I think it's an interesting decision to make it an extra layer thick. It makes sense because if they have bigger components, right, more powerful components, and they want it to read as a PS4, so that makes sense as a design structure of like, this is a more powerful PS4, so it's a bigger PS4, right? The most interesting thing to me is the price point. $450 doesn't seem crazy for the type of power it has. I would assume that they would try to go cheaper with this, considering that it probably or might release alongside the PSVR. I think 400 would probably be a nice, more round number. Obviously, this is all rumor. They could have made a change as how much they're going to cost. It's going to cost. Yeah. So, what do you think about this whole thing with this Foxconn employee? Do you think the design's correct? What do you think about the design and the price and everything, Dom?
I don't believe it for a minute. It does not look legitimate. I don't believe it.
You don't believe it at all?
Nah, I think it's complete fallacy. Like, it's just, this doesn't look like real. It looks like something you would draw, like your third grade son would draw or something, like if he designed it. It just doesn't look right.
Okay. What about the price though? So say the design isn't correct. Do you think he's right about the price, $450?
Yeah, the price is more believable. I would guess $400, but I don't know how much it costs to make the the thing, and whether or not they want to eat some money on each one, and etc., or how they think it'll stack up against other consoles that are around. Because everything we have is rumor and speculation on how powerful it will be. So maybe, like you said, maybe something's changed. But that I would hope it's not more than 450. I think that's the absolute maximum they would want to go for with this.
Yeah, so my only argument to that, and I kind of already have the counter argument to my own argument, is like, so the rumors about Scorpio is that it will probably be around $400 to $450, right? And it's from the rumors, it's much more powerful than the Neo. Microsoft makes way more money than Sony does.
Yeah,
easily. So they can easily afford to eat money. They can eat money all day if they needed to, right? And they are definitely gonna they're trying to compete again, so they're definitely gonna make it so it's at least $450 or $400. There's no way Sony should make this more than $450 because why would somebody buy this over an Xbox Scorpio when it's substantially stronger? Because you figure the people that are buying this in the first place are looking at the performance, So it's like, well, what should I buy, this one or this one? They're the same price, but this one's way more expensive. But
really
my counter argument to that, as I was going to say, is Scorpio doesn't come out till next year at the earliest.
Exactly.
And we're assuming that this is coming out this year. By that time, there would be a price drop. It would make sense. So I already had the counter argument to my own argument. I was just out there for discussion.
This is out there first. I mean, this is available. So if you have a 4K TV and this is there, Scorpio's not here yet, you don't even know what that is, then you buy this if you have money to spend, right?
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
when Scorpio does come out, you're kind of like, do I need it? Because then it's, so that's the advantage that they have, even though it's not as big of a jump in power.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting avenue to see how everything shakes out. That's pretty much it. I wanted to hear your opinions on that, and you gave your opinions. You don't think it's real, which is completely understandable. I think there is some truth to this. I don't know if it's 100% true, but I do think there are some grains that might be true. The design is interesting, to say the very least. I really don't like the PS4 Slim design. In my opinion, I don't. It looks like a Roku to me. A lot of people have said it looks cheaper than the original PS4, which I totally agree with. It definitely, I wouldn't say it reads as a Nintendo console, but it definitely reads cheaper than what Sony consoles usually look like. I don't think a Sony console has necessarily looked cheap since the PS2, but that's my opinion. Neither here nor there.